Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the game against Liverpool at Anfield that finished 0-0. So let's start out with player ratings. Every player starts out on 5. If they do everything right, they get a 10. If they do everything wrong, they get a 0. David De Gea, I'd give David De Gea a 6, right? I think he did okay. He didn't have much to do in the game. He made a couple of saves, and it's kind of tricky with keepers, right? Because if they're not making many saves, they get a 5, although they've done nothing wrong, they've not really done anything right. So it's kind of like, where do you put them? I mean, he made a couple of saves that he should have made. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Aaron Wan-Bissaka had a bit of a mixed bag. I think he was mostly good, but there was a couple of times that he'd be tracking Mane and he'd be brought massively out of position going all the way over to Luke Shaw's side. Mane would do a run in it and just leave a massive gaping hole where Aaron Wan-Bissaka was supposed to be, and you'd see players running in behind. And I think that was quite problematic a couple of times, and there was a couple of times where that space was made. Luckily, Liverpool didn't capitalise, and Liverpool weren't great going forward today. But I feel Aaron Wan-Bissaka going forward, people will see the blueprint of how to get Aaron Wan-Bissaka out of position and how the other teams can exploit the space that's left because of his poor positioning. I don't think that the team planned for Mane to be darting across and pulling Wan-Bissaka out of position. I know for a fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wouldn't have said, follow Mane wherever he goes across the pitch. Apart from being pulled out of position a couple of times, I think he did well overall. I think his defending was good on the most part, but I think being pulled out of position that bad sort of hinders his score quite a bit. Aaron Wan-Bissaka gets a 5.5 out of 10. Moving on to the centre-back pairing, Victor Lindelof. Now, before the game started, and I saw the team sheet, I was pretty horrified to see Lindelof there and Bailly being excluded, but I am happy to admit I was wrong. For me, Lindelof was our second best player, and he narrowly missed out on man of the match to another player I'll get to in a second. Lindelof had a really good game. He defended well. I think we sat back, which suited him. He wasn't required to run in behind and stop any of them counter-attacks happening from Liverpool because we didn't really let them counter. We sat back quite a bit and we were quite well disciplined at the back when Liverpool came and attacked us. So overall, I give Lindelof an 8 out of 10. Moving on to Harry Maguire. I think Harry Maguire had a great game as well. I think he was slightly worse than Lindelof, but much of the same. I think they did really well together. Will it work in the future? Probably not. But as of this game, I think they did well. Because Maguire did slightly worse than Lindelof, I'll give him a 7.9 out of 10. Moving on to left back now. Luke Shaw was fantastic this game. A lot of people wanted to say last season that Salah was one of the best wingers in the world. Maybe he was. Liverpool did great last season, but Luke Shaw did so well this game. And I think it kind of shows the quality that Luke Shaw has. Defensively, he was perfect. And in my opinion, he's the best defensive fullback we've got. Going forward, he's pushing Telles for the creativity and what he brings to the team going forward. Luke Shaw was my man of the match. Luke Shaw gets an 8.5 out of 10. As we're going into midfield, that's kind of where things start to fall apart. Unfortunately, our midfield wasn't as good as our defence. I think Fred and McTominay were overrun by Liverpool's midfield. I feel like Liverpool dominated the midfield. So I'd give McTominay a 4 out of 10. I thought he was really poor this game. I'd give Fred a 4.5 out of 10. I think he was also really poor this game. But I also feel like it wasn't necessarily their fault. I feel like Liverpool sort of played to dominate the midfield and they were successful in doing that. I feel like because they were overrun, there wasn't a lot more that they could do. They were sort of trying to do multiple jobs at once and hence getting out of position a lot. So I feel like it was a tough game for them too. Going forward, I would like to see the pairing in bigger games, but I feel like maybe we should adapt the tactics and maybe try and avoid them being overrun in the future. So going forward into our attackers, Anthony Martial didn't have a great game in my opinion. I thought he was wasteful. He was defending a lot with Shaw. Shaw was going forward and he was sort of covering for Shaw. I didn't really notice it too much until I saw a heat map in the first half, and then I thought, oh yeah, Martial was defending quite a bit more than usual. And I think Martial often gets criticised for being a bit lazy. This game he did track back, so there's a positive. So yeah, Martial defended well, but going forward he wasn't amazing. I feel like he was very wasteful, and I feel like we rushed a lot trying to get the defence to attack, so we should have taken our time a little bit more. Martial was a part of that. Martial was rushing, he was wasteful. I give him a 4.5 out of 10. I didn't think he was great this game. Bruno Fernandes, look, we give him the credit when he's great. We need to sort of be honest with ourselves when he's not great. I don't think Bruno Fernandes had a great game. I don't think a lot of the balls he was playing were coming off. There's a lot of scrutiny that Bruno Fernandes has come under because he's only had a goal and no assist against the top 6 teams, which is a load of nonsense because he scored 2 and assisted 1 against Everton, who are 6th. So I don't know where that stat's come from. Maybe it's a stat that's just sort of been mangled around to make to get the agenda against Bruno that he's not as good as people are making out. I don't think he had a great game, but I also think it's important to note that the media are going to absolutely slam down on Bruno Fernandes when he doesn't have a good game, because that sort of helps get them clicks. I think the negativity towards players and being controversial is where you're going to see all these stats of like I said before, the 1 goal, no assists in 6 games. So overall, I give Bruno Fernandes a 4 out of 10. He's still a quality player, it just wasn't his game. Now going on to who I thought was our best forward this game, Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba doesn't typically play on the right. He put a shift in today. He looked the most likely to score or assist for me. Sort of filled in where Bruno was sort of lacking this game. He looked the most creative, he looked the most likely. He wasn't amazing by any means, but he was the best of the rest. So I'd give him a 6 out of 10. Quick note on Paul Pogba, a lot of people want to see him in the centre defensive midfield role. I feel like he can play there in the lesser games when teams are going to sit back, but when teams are going to come and attack us, I feel like he can be a bit of a liability defensively. That's not to say that he can't play there in the games, in the smaller games, like for instance against Fulham. I probably would play Paul Pogba in that position because it frees up an attacking role further forward, and we don't need 2 players to defend in the lesser games, like I say, when teams are sitting back. I feel like a player like Matic can just sit and hold that position when Paul Pogba's going forward. But overall, I would like to see Paul Pogba staying either in the left attacking midfielder position or the right attacking midfield position. I do feel like he's important to play in the bigger games because he's one of our best players. But I don't think that you should sacrifice a defensive midfielder role to get Paul Pogba in the centre more, because he's not gonna replace Bruno going forward. So yeah, that's just something that I'd like to add about Paul Pogba. And finally, Marcus Rashford, who played up front for us this game. Now, Marcus Rashford was a little bit frustrating this game. He was making the runs, he was offside quite a lot. His decision making was poor this game. Look, he's not used to playing up front in the striker role. I think when he moved out onto the left, he looked a lot better. I felt there was a lot of pressure on him as our sole outlet because of how we were playing against Liverpool. And I don't think playing up front suited him. I felt like when Cavani came on and then he shifted onto the left, like I said before, he looked a lot better. Again, it wasn't really Marcus Rashford's game. He should have played Cavani in, and we maybe would be looking at a 1-0 victory over Liverpool. There was a few other times he made poor decisions. I think he was unlucky not to score early on when he gave away a foul against Robertson. I feel like that was really soft. I feel like anywhere else on the pitch, maybe you'd let that go. But yeah, I feel like Robertson was a little bit lucky there. He beat Alisson and he would have scored. And again, there's another goal that we could have had. Fine margins. Rashford was a little bit unlucky, but to be honest with you, he wasn't good enough this game. So I'd give him a 4 out of 10. On to our substitutes. Cavani came on, Marshall came off around the 60th minute. He was making the runs. There was obviously that pass that Rashford should have played and Cavani probably would have scored. He didn't have a lot to work with, but he didn't really get the service. I wouldn't want to penalise him too heavy for that, so I guess I give him an average 5. And then Mason Greenwood came on for Bruno Fernandes. There's not really much to say on this. I don't even know if Greenwood touched the ball. What I will say is that Bruno's reaction, a lot of people are going to sort of say, oh look, he's spat his dummy out. I think that just shows passion. And I remember Ronaldo doing that. There's quite a famous video of Ronaldo throwing a bit of a tantrum, a bit of a temper tantrum when he gets taken off. I think it's natural. I think it shows passion. Back to Greenwood, because that's who I'm reviewing. I give him a 5 out of 10. He didn't really do much. He didn't have a chance to do much. Coming on in the 89th minute, what do you expect? So what do I think overall of the game? I think that both teams maybe were afraid to lose. I feel like the pressure sort of got to both teams. I feel like Liverpool dominated midfield, but they didn't have as many clear-cut chances as we did. So you could argue either team deserved to win, depending on who you support. But in my opinion, a draw was probably a fair result. Like I say, Manchester United had the clearer opportunities. What I will say is a lot of the praise that Liverpool's front three were getting in the previous season seems to have gone away. There was a lot of talk about Van Dijk sort of hampering their season, but I feel like the forwards don't look up to it either. I feel like the mentality of the squad's kind of gone a little bit. Maybe they've just not got the motivation from winning it last season, but they don't look like they're going to go on to win, and they don't look like they're going to go on and become champions again. What I would say is that I think City looked most likely after watching that game. I feel like we had the opportunity to beat Liverpool a couple of times and we didn't, but it was unfortunate. I feel like we're just sort of missing that little edge, that little bit. Maybe it's another player, maybe it's different tactics, but we're just missing one or two maybe players. We're missing one or two more players. Going forward, hopefully we get more consistency and not just become like a form team that just wins a chunk of games, loses a chunk of games. It'd be nice to see us winning more consistently and over a longer period. Let me know your thoughts of the game. Was there anything I said that you agreed with or disagreed with? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.